and you see that person fall to the ground to his knees and say, "Oh my God, what did I do?" And he's crying in tears. And we all make mistakes in our life. I'm the type of officer who says, listen, you did what you did, and it's time, to do the time, and whatever. I'm not harsh, or I don't judge people or stuff like that.
Yeah, you don't seem that way.
No. So yeah. So
do you ever get used to that feeling?
I do.
You did it, man! All right! Look out! Oh, bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you?
Sheriff Ali Haymour is our next guest, and thank you for coming here, sir. You are in law enforcement. You've ran for office 3 times. I heard a lot about you. You were spoken of very highly by a few people in my circle, and I'm glad that you're able to join us today for a quick conversation about you as a person and the career that you've had, and any advice you have for us moving forward in this crazy, crazy world. But thank you for being here.
And thank you for having me, and thank you to your listeners. And allowing for me to participate in such a good experience. I've never did a podcast before.
We were just saying that, so I'm glad that we were your first. That's great to hear. That's what we want. So you were in the military before at a young age, I'm assuming.
Mm-hmm.
And how long were you in the military for?
I served for about 5 years, and I with the Armored Corps. Which means the tanks, stuff like that. So,
you got to play with the big toys?
With the big toys, yeah. And it was good. I was during right before the Afghanistan war.
Yeah.
I got a job with the Alberta Sheriffs, so I kind of left the military, joined the Alberta Sheriffs, and I've been with the Alberta Sheriffs for about 17 years now.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Extensive career.
Well, yeah.
So what made you get into that at a young age?
I started this journey to become a police officer. I've always wanted to become a police officer, and
just a dream you had as a kid.
As a kid, I just wanted to get into that career. For me, I have no regrets. Yes, I ended up as an Alberta sheriff.
Yeah.
But in hindsight, thinking back, I'm happy. I would highly recommend the Alberta Sheriffs. I am truly blessed to work where I'm working. Great people, great management, and I'm proud of what we do. So, and the sky's the limit. I think, good things are going to come for the Alberta Sheriffs in the near future.
How has it changed in the last 17 years or so?
Well,
like from your experience before to now, what are some of the changes that have taken place that make it more appealing for people to want to get into that?
When I first started, we were called the Provincial Constables. And then we evolved into the Alberta Sheriffs. On a policeman spectrum of duties, a policeman does, officer presence to ticket violations all the way to murder cases. Well, this part of the scale where there's murders, rapes, B&Es, etc., has grown dramatically in our province. The idea to start the Alberta Sheriffs at this end of the scale is to relieve police officers and throw them on the serious more end of the scale where there's crime, the major crimes. So, and we would move slowly down the line, right? So, for example, when I first started, we used to just do the courthouse and prisoner escorts.
Yeah.
Well, now we got scan unit, we've got we do the judicial and provincial politician unit. Like we provide security for them.
What's a scan unit?
SCAN stands for Safe Communities and Neighborhoods.
Okay.
So they watch for drug houses.
Gotcha.
Right.
Gotcha.
So and we have a warrant. We used to have a warrant execution unit. So if someone had a warrant, we'd go out and get them. We have a surveillance unit. So we have so many units within the Alberta Sheriffs that evolved, right? So, and more is yet to come, right? This used to be the police used to do all this. Now we're doing it. We're helping them out, and we're working closely with the police forces. So I think, looking down the road, politicians are recognizing our professionalism, and, they're going to give us more duties, that which means more job creation for people to come in and join. And so yeah, I think the Alberta Sheriffs has a hopeful, positive future in
That's
Alberta.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And when you ran for office, you ran 3 times, but it was mostly to see changes in the police force and how it's approached and how it's dissected. What was your main focal point running for office? Like, what was it that you were that was at the top of your list for things that you'd like to see changed?
Well, I would advocate, if I ever made it, I would advocate for a provincial police force in Alberta.
Okay.
I believe that we have all these, we have the means to achieve that, but we just need to bring it together. Someone to sit down and say, listen. I think the formula is, don't quote me if I'm wrong, but I think we pay 70% right now for the RCMP, and the federal government pays 30%. Right, for the RCMP to exist in our province. Well, we have the resources that we have right now provincially, like peace officers, Alberta sheriffs. You've got Fish and Wildlife. You've got corrections, bylaw. So many agencies that I think we can pull it together, make it one provincial police force, and help the police fight crime that way. I think it's job creation. Mm-hmm. It's also I would say better security and less money. We can save a lot of money than what we're paying the RCMP right now. So
it's then you want a collective sort of feel to law enforcement where everybody's kind of coming together to basically have the due diligence done, where it's monitored a little closely and just seems like it would be more of a camaraderie thing instead of just all these different departments. Am I wrong by assuming that?
No,
that's
you're right. But it's also, in addition to what you're saying, it's more of empowering frontline workers. So, for example, an Alberta sheriff who may pull somebody over for a ticket violation, for a traffic violation.
Gotcha.
And he sees a gun and cocaine right on the seat. He can't do anything about that. He doesn't have powers.
Oh.
So
what does he do in that situation?
He can alert the RCMP, give the ticket, and let the person go, right?
Wow.
But for me, I feel like the government should empower frontline workers. Like I know, in the last provincial election, rural crime was a big issue, and we put millions of dollars into hiring more RCMP officers. We have the Alberta sheriffs in the rural areas. If you look at what kind of crime is out there, I mean, it's mischief, vandalism, stuff like that, right? I mean, if the Alberta sheriff is out there, empower him. If he sees officer presence goes a long way, right? I mean, we were all young once, and if there was an officer there, to watch out, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's number one. Empower. If he sees, something that's going on, come here, I want to talk to you. Get his name, number, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Let the officer, exercise discretion. Let him, empower him to do more. Even if it's summary convictions, right? So, what would it take? A little bit of training, to do investigations, and that's where I thought that if I was to run for office, I would definitely advocate for a provincial police force.
Now, is that met with any controversy? Like, is there what's the one thing that you find is standing in the way of somebody doing that? Like, what do you see as the major problem?
We love the RCMP. The rural areas love the RCMP, and they're a great national police force. Like, the RCMP is our tradition. It's our history.
Yeah.
We cannot neglect that, right? And I'm not against it at all. There's always going to be a presence for the RCMP in our province, right? They're a national police force, right?
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to say, times are changing. We're no longer 1 million in Alberta. We're 4 million and growing. So we got to do things differently, and we got to change with the times, right? And policing and security is one of the biggest budgets we have in government. all I'm trying to say is that, maybe that we have the resources, let's use them effectively and efficiently, without picking our pockets with new taxes and user fees and stuff like that. So
Makes sense.
yeah.
That's a great point, actually. So where do you see Edmonton, in the crime waves and everything that's going on in our country? Where does Edmonton rate as far as like, your per capita crimes that are occurring?
I think it's in the top three. I know
It's in the top three.
I think so. I don't have the stats in front of me, but I know at one time we were one of the highest. So we're up there per capita. Yeah.
And that was how long ago?
I would say 3 years ago. So
Wow.
yeah.
Just recently.
Just recently. Just look at the murder cases in our city, right? So people. I heard things like, it's because of the economy. The economy's so good, it attracts bad people to come to our city. And when times are bad, the times are bad, and poverty causes crime. It seems
You think the jobs up north and the lack of jobs now are forcing a lot of these people that work out of town coming into the city, not having a job readily provided for them or available for them, that have led into some criminal activities? Like, do you think that had anything to do with that?
Oh, definitely, it's a factor. That's something that we cannot factor out. Money, weather. There's many factors to why crime happens, right? So alcohol, drugs, all that stuff. Addictions. Those are all contributions to crime, and we have to get a hold of that. I just believe that we need more of a community kind of policing system. Better than the old, back in the olden days, we used to do that. Now it's more of to me, I believe it's more of militant kind of.
And the neighborhood watch is not really.
Right away they're drawing guns, get down, this, that,
Yeah.
and it's like. I think you need to know the community a little bit better, get out there, more community policing. And talking to the people, knowing the people of the neighborhood, we can reduce crime. I know me,
Because you can always tell when somebody does that.
Yeah,
You can always tell the officer that's more connected to his community than one that isn't. They almost get talked back to a little bit different. They get different answers. You know what I mean? I feel like you can sense that, because I've met police officers such as yourself that seem very well connected and know very aware of their surroundings, and others just there to do a job. But you can see that, you can feel that on some of these guys, no?
Yes. Oh, definitely. There's people who are out there that are just policy driven, and right away want to give a ticket. And I'm not going to blame the officers.
Yeah.
I think it's our system of policing that has that, that dictates that officers have to, conduct themselves that way now.
Yeah.
I'd like to see more discretion put into police officers, allowing them to make some decisions, because each situation is different. If you pull somebody over and, there's a reason there,
Yeah.
or even letting them off with a warning.
Yeah.
But it seems like they're already writing the ticket, and without, and they come, the first questions they ask is, why I stopped you?
Yeah.
Allowing you to admit, well, yeah, I was speeding there, right? Maybe a warning would help that person. Like, I heard a story a long time ago. I'll give you an example. Someone told me that when I was, he's 50 now, he's my age. He said, when I was 20, I got pulled over by a police officer. And the cop came and knocked at my window. I rolled down the window and he said to me, do you know why I stopped you? And he goes, yeah, I was speeding. He goes, yeah, well, I'm going to let you off with a warning. But I'm going to tell you something. The next time I have to scrape, a body off the floor because of people like you speeding, I don't know what I'm going to do. That guy remembered that conversation. And ever since then, he told me I don't speed anymore because of that. Police interactions, in that manner, helps
They're very
us.
profound.
They teach us lifelong lessons. Giving tickets
It takes 30 seconds.
only gives us resentment, So there's two approaches to everything. And trust me, with today's world, what I'm seeing, and this is my personal opinion, is the standoffish kind of attitude with everybody. Like you pull somebody over or you talk to somebody, you say, hey, come here. It's like, I don't care. Do what you want to do. Whoa, take it easy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Take it easy, you know?
Before you've said anything,
Because
before you...
they've got to that breaking point,
Yeah.
right? People are stressed out. We got to feel with what people are going through. They got financial problems, family problems. You know, the cost of living is just so high. So, you know, that $110 ticket, you might be hurting somebody. So maybe it's time.
And that's if it's $110.
That's if it's 110. Like, I mean, you know.
Tickets now are like...
Yeah, fines and fees.
They're like
you know.
150. All mine were 150.
There you go. See?
Yeah, those are very minor, man.
Yeah.
I've had some that are like 500, 600.
Depending on the violation, right?
Of course. And if there's just one or two.
Right.
No
you know.
seatbelt, we saw a phone in your hand, you know, just left the parking lot or whatever.
Exactly. You
Yeah,
know,
it
I
can
mean,
get expensive.
you know, we saw an increase in photo radar just recently. Like, you know, these are things that people are just.
What's your take on that photo radar?
I'm totally against it personally.
are?
Yeah, I am. I'd like to see more of the, like in Edmonton right now, we've got a 30 zone, a 40 zone, a 50 zone, a 60 zone, a 70 zone, an 80 zone, a 90 zone, and you're driving a few blocks and you don't know you jump.
What zone you
Yeah,
might
you don't
be.
even know what zone you're in anymore. And then there's a camera there waiting for you, you know, taking a picture, and then you see a ticket in the mail. You know, with once again going back to officer presence, you know, even bylaw officers who are driving the community, you put them there right by a school. You know, people drive differently, you know.
Yeah.
Cameras, you know, is
cash cows.
it a cash cow or is it safety? You got to ask yourself that question.
It seems like it's more of a cash cow.
You know, brother. I mean, let's look at the situation. You've got, for example, do cameras catch people who are carelessly driving? Do they catch people who are drinking and driving? Do they catch people who are driving without insurance? Did you understand what I'm trying to say? I mean, these are people are the major issues that are causing accidents in today's world. You know, so we need more officers, more boots on the ground, pulling people over. Let me see your documents. Let me see, and using discretion. You know, if a guy's going, you know, 7, 8, 10 over, you know, we want the guy who's going 100 over or 50 over or 60 over and driving like dangerously driving.
Yeah.
That's the person we want to catch, right?
That's true.
Not someone who's coming off a 50 zone, coming off a 60 zone, hitting a 50 zone,
Slowing down.
slowly slowing down, and there's, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes, you know, driving used to, I guess for me, driving used to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
You know, I used to love putting up the music. And you know,
You don't do that anymore?
well, no, now I'm paying attention on the zones and what zone I'm in, right? But
Or you're in uniform?
yeah, and we used to, back in my days, there was lots of muscle cars. Like, I mean, we used to Trans Ams and
There's
stuff
still
like
a
that.
few.
There's
You
still
see
a
them
few.
hanging around in Tim Hortons
Yeah.
parking lot, their
Yeah.
meets. Yeah.
Yeah, those were the good days. I mean, and I miss those days. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think, I mean, now definitely with, you know, more schools around and children and then the serious issue of accidents, we do have to be more careful. But I think we can do it in different ways. That's what I think.
You've had a long career in law enforcement and you still are going strong. What are some of the things that have happened to you that were just heart-wrenchingly serious, that just shook you? And then I'll ask you maybe to elaborate on some of the good things that have gone on. And I'm sure there's lots of those too, where you were so proud to be doing what you're doing. And I'm sure that's every day for you. But some of those moments where, because you were telling me a story about a friend that you knew in school when we had first sat down and talked, and it's, you know, you don't even think about stuff like that. Do you have anything that sticks out to you the most in the, you know, from your past?
You know, it's a risky job. I've been into, you know, situations where you're fighting for your life. You know, and I did win the Valor Award from the province. It was a gun situation, and we were able to take that gun away from his hand and, you know, unarm him and restrain him, the person.
Yeah.
So that really resonated with me, you know, and it still does, to the point where,
Because so much was at stake.
yeah, you know, you know, you're sitting in court cases and you're listening to people who, you know, who committed stupid crimes, and I'm the one who, you know, processed them and put them in back, and you closed the doors of the cell.
Yeah.
and you see that person fall to the ground to his knees and say, "Oh my God, what did I do?" And he's crying in tears. And you know, we all make mistakes in our life. You know, I'm the type of officer who says, you know, listen, you know, you did what you did, and it's time, you know, to do the time, and whatever. You know, I'm not harsh, or I don't judge people or stuff like that.
Yeah, you don't seem that way.
No. So yeah, yeah. So
Do you ever get used to that feeling?
I do.
You do?
I do. I try to talk to, like, that's the part of the reason why I run for politics.
So you feel that you do become desensitized sometimes after the 10th cell door has closed?
Yeah.
Or,
You know, I mean, it takes a toll on you. It really does.
Oh, of
and
course.
you know, when you start thinking about, you know, society and people, and you know, and you fear for the future.
your own morals, your own beliefs.
Right. You know, I mean, you talked about that. I mean, for me, when we compare the past to the present,
Yeah.
you can foresee the future if we stay on this path that we're on.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
I
like
agree.
during my days, brother, you know, if you heard somebody got beaten up, we would talk for weeks about that stuff. You know, if a knife fight, you stabbed somebody, we would talk about it for years. So in today's world,
You're a swipe away from
it's
changing
like
the conversation.
you're reading 3 or 4 times in the newspaper, this guy got stabbed, this guy got shot, you know, you know, it's just a usual thing, right? So
Yeah. And
Yeah.
we don't want it to be usual. We
No.
don't want it to be ordinary.
no, we want it to be safe and
Yeah.
secure. That's what we want our children to grow up to be in a safe and secure world.
That's like what happened in the UK there, that church burned down, right?
Yeah.
And then they raised like, I think it was like $1 billion or like hundreds of
700 million.
Yeah.
Yeah. Close
And
to
then
$1
you
billion.
hear about like those stories that happen in Africa, and it's like the lowest thing that's like being published. And
Priorities, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They raised so much. They raised almost $1 billion for that, just for a church, and then people are dying every day, constantly in like a different country, and nobody cares at all.
Yeah.
They
That's
barely raise. If they can raise $1 billion for like
A building
for
that
a
opens up
build-
for one day.
yeah, imagine how many lives you can save
yeah.
in other countries that are worse off. You know what I mean? And nobody bats an eye about that kind of stuff.
Well,
Yeah.
guys like Ali, I think are you know what the world needs more of to sort of point and help us, you know, start focusing, you know, on the right path, in the right direction, and you know, attacking the things that matter. We talked about the word attack, maybe not being the right word, but sometimes being maybe a little more aggressive
Yeah.
in your pursuit is what we need, because the world's aggressive now. I mean, you're talking about how much the world's changed. How's it changed now with every second video on the internet being a cop being told off, or, you know, no, you can't see my driver's license, or why are you talking to me, or I don't answer questions, body cams, cell phones are everywhere. How do you feel like, where do you feel like that's going with I mean, I know we don't see all of it, because the guys that are posting their videos on the internet are guys that are getting away with saying certain things and doing certain things. How do you feel about that? Are we here in Edmonton walking around, you know, as police officers with a body cam? Are you against that? Is that something that, you know, you see being helpful?
Oh, 100%. I mean, that's to protect the officer and the person, right? I mean, both. When you go to court, you know, it's like a he say, she say kind of situation.
Yeah.
Where the camera comes in effect is that, well, here you go. This is exactly what was said,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Did I, you know, the officers like...
So it also records sound.
Yeah, it records everything that was said. So if there's some false accusations from, you know, the person,
yeah.
The defendant,
Yeah.
who's going before the court, you know, the officer can say, well, no, this is a situation here. There's a camera that shows everything, right?
Yeah.
So that's why the camera is to protect, you know, both sides of the situation. Because cops can lie too, right? Everybody can lie, right? But the camera's there to bring out the truth.
Yeah.
And that's what the camera is for. So
What else do you guys carry? What's on your belt? You got a gun? Let me see if I...
yeah,
Are you
fire-
like Batman equipped, kind of? You know?
Well,
It's starting to feel that way.
You got your firearm,
Yeah.
right? You have your taser,
no, some of them have tasers, right? So,
okay.
yeah,
Handcuffs,
handcuffs. We've got
pepper spray,
pepper spray. Yeah, baton.
baton.
Yeah, flashlight. Yeah, so you got a pretty heavy belt. Duty
Yeah, I
belt
was
there.
gonna say, that
and
sounds
then
like-
the vest itself, right? So
The vest itself probably weighs a good, what,
yeah,
10, 15
yeah,
pounds?
because it's bulletproof. So yeah. Yeah, it's pretty big. I mean, like you said, I mean, the world is going back to that in the world and the way on a national kind of level. We all I'm saying is that, you know, when it comes to policing and security, we have to do changes, like, you know,
Yeah.
and keep up with what's going on in the world. So, I mean, because you brought up really good points, and
If you really want to make that change, you know what I mean? Like, you have to really want it, you know, otherwise, if your agenda's different, then, well, it's an obvious reason why you're not putting your best foot forward, you know, with some of these politicians and things that they're after and things that they're advocating for, you know?
yeah, no, definitely. I mean, like Canada gives a lot of money to the world, and we have to go back in time to, you know, the founding fathers of this country came here to establish something that's new and pure and innocent and a system that is serves equality and protection and you know, for everybody, for all citizens.
Yeah.
And now we're back into that European and in the world affairs, right? Because you know, but there's so much warlords out there and stuff like that. I think it's for us. It's time that we go back and let's focus on our own country right now and our own people and our own problems and stuff like that. So
Agreed. And you grew up in Edmonton.
no, well, born and raised, yeah.
Oh,
And
so you must have had a lot of contact with people you used to know, or have you ever ran into somebody where you haven't seen them in years, and as an officer you're doing your due diligence in your job, and you run into somebody that just like couldn't believe that it was that same person, somebody you might have went to school with or, you know, played hockey with or something like that?
oh yeah, I mean, you know, working where I'm working, you interact with a lot of the public and stuff like that. So, yeah, I run into a lot of people I used to know in the past, and happy to see. In some cases, really happy to see them.
Yeah.
And in some cases, unfortunately, they're in the system, and you know, you run into them. Oh, well, I used to go to school with that person, and he got into a little bit of trouble, and so.
Crazy.
Yeah.
And you probably want to do your best to help and be there, but you're also got your duties that you got to attend to. That must be
Yeah. I mean, like
not the best situation.
It isn't. It's uncomfortable. I mean, when I do run into that situation, most officers will say, "Listen, can you send another officer to deal with this matter?"
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, because there's a personal kind of a connection there that, you know. So they kind of, you know, if you feel uncomfortable dealing with the problem, just call dispatch and say, "Listen, can you send another officer here to deal with this? I just feel uncomfortable dealing with this."
So if you write a ticket and you go back to the car, has there ever been a situation where you come back to give the ticket and you change your mind? Because everybody seems to think that if the cop comes up to you and you got, you know, a certain scenario or story, that once they start writing that ticket, there's no going back. It's just, is there a lot of paperwork behind taking back a ticket? Has that ever happened? Is that a big secret that nobody should know about?
No, I mean, our traffic sheriffs, you know, they're the sheriffs are, for everybody that I know from and talk to, they're really good guys, like excellent.
Oh, I'm sure most are. Yeah, of course. I'm just saying, is it written in stone once you start moving that pen on that pad?
No, I don't. It's not. I mean, I've seen people, you know, I mean, you know, they can take that ticket away, or
they lied to me then. No, I'm just kidding.
Is that right? I mean,
No,
I mean, everybody's different.
I'm just asking.
Yeah.
Just asking. Curiosity.
Yeah. No, I mean, I got faith in our members that they're really great guys. So they.
Besides all the money and the funds and running for office, what are some of the changes that you foresee that need to happen for some of these things to start affecting Edmonton in the right way, where there's less crime, less drugs? Drugs is a big problem, especially you got the opioids, you got, you know, people are eating, you know, those Tide Pods. They're, you know, that, like, there's all these new drugs coming up, and we talked to Grace about the same thing, and now they have safe injection sites. And you brought up an amazing point, because when I was listening to Grace, and I really like and respect the lady very much, and she brought up the whole safe site injections that they have here, and I was new to it because she was explaining it to me, but as I told you, some, because you recommended Grace to the show, and I'm forever grateful for you doing that. I brought up some of the things that we discussed, and I brought up the safe injection sites, and then you brought up an awesome point that I didn't even think about, which is would me as a citizen want a safe injection site just a block away from my house? The answer was no, unfortunately. And the other problem you presented was, how can people even get to this safe injection site? Because most of these people don't have the extra $5-10 to take a cab, take an Uber, jump on their mountain bike and go to these sites. So I didn't even think about the travel. I didn't even think about how it would affect everybody else. But you seem to have another take on it and another possible solution. Care to share a little bit about
Yeah,
that?
I mean, you kind of explained it very well. I mean, in addition to what you just said, there's that administrative process where, you got to take the name and, his address. And many of these people have warrants out for their arrest. Are they willing to come, into
The public eye.
yeah, exactly. So number two is that, let's talk about fairness. And there's people who have diabetes, right? I mean, taxpayers are paying money for drugs and needles and sites that, while people who are medically ill, have to pay for their own stuff, right? So to me, I mean, once again, I don't know if we have our priorities right here. Drugs is a big problem in our society. Big. Brother, how much money are we spending on fighting drugs in our police forces, in our courts, in our hospitals, jails? If you find out, how much money is going into combating drugs in different areas, you'd be amazed. Let's get rid of it. Let's be proactive and find where the drug dealers are and put them in jail. Enough is enough. If this is the problem, and it's killing our children and our most people in our society, it's time that we deal with this problem the right way. And putting up injection sites, I just feel it's not the best way of going about things. Let's look at treatment centers. Anybody who's wanting to change their lives.
Is there many treatment centers in Edmonton?
From my understanding, they're so backed. It's up to a point where it's 2 years waiting time.
Yeah. Even for Grace's program, it was about a year wait time.
I've been in situations, brother. I'm sorry, man.
You said there's lineups.
I've seen judges, scratching their heads when I pull this person out, who's addicted to drugs, and the judge is says, "What do I do with you? Do I, if I'm going to let you go, you're going to hurt yourself and hurt others on the streets, and if I keep you inside the jail, you're not going to get the help that you need." Right? So, I mean, we do need more treatment centers, and I think that's the route to take. Let's help them get off the drugs. Let's not inject drugs into them. Yeah. So that's my stance. And I think we talked about.
It's a valid point. It's it's well warranted.
You're going to hear the other side of the argument. I mean, people have, and with all respect to everybody. Yeah, exactly, right. Yeah. So I mean, they're going to say, well, we're saving lives too. Yeah. Right. I mean, overdoses. They're going to touch on that. They're going to touch on a lot of things. So
you brought up a good point when me and you were sitting down talking the first time, and you said to me, there's a lot of reasons why people start doing drugs. And I mean, me, like the average guy, like Chris or Tanvir, we think people start drugs because they're stressed out, they lost their job, they broke up with a girlfriend, they got into a bad car accident. But then we started talking about things that might have slipped my mind and maybe our viewers. You started saying, I mean, maybe share some of the things that you were saying as to some of the reasons that people get into drugs that I didn't, I mean, if I thought about it, I would have known, but you brought them to light, and I just don't think people think about it that way.
Yeah, there's, drugs, many people fall into, it's their way of coping with their depression, with problems in life, family problems, financial problems, even health problems. That's a big one I've been hearing lately in courts too. I can't afford the medicine that I'm supposed to get, so I just drink a bottle, and that just takes the pain away. are,
So the cheaper
snort some
drugs versus the ones that they can't afford over the counter,
Right.
Which are drugs in
Which
their
are
own.
drugs, and and fear is another one I've been seeing. Is like people.
You mentioned that fear.
Yeah, bullying. People who are that example I was giving you when I was in court. It was a 15-year-old boy who was in at the mall, and some older man in his 60s took him home and shared some drugs with him, and then sexually assaulted him. Well, when he got on the stand, it broke my heart when I heard him say, I thought that was the price I had to pay for drugs and a place to eat and for some food.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was like, well, I would like to see some safe homes. I mean, we talked about that.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
like something there, and bringing up churches, like you said, let's work closely with our communities. Like we have all this infrastructure in our city and in our province. Open the doors.
Yeah.
Open the doors. Let them in. So what? What's going to take? Give them, a phone, some food, a newspaper to find a job. Get them back on their feet.
Probably reduce crime by
Yeah.
a fair bit.
The one person, that girl that I was telling you about, that I knew from school.
Yeah.
Her story really hurt me. Like and I asked her, like, you come from a good family, this and that. What happened? And she said, I just was on the streets. I didn't go home. I got into a fight with, through some bad times. Went to welfare the first day. It was a Friday, and they said to me they have to come back on Monday. I slept the first day on the streets. A car pulled up. She went with him. He gave her some food, and he slept with her. And she said to me that I couldn't live with myself the next day. So I turned to drugs to forget. And then that problem got worse and worse and worse. We could have prevented that.
Just by being open on Saturday or Sunday.
Or just a safe home, where people can go.
Because all it takes is that.
In
that case,
one
the
moment.
car pulling up.
Exactly.
That's it.
That's it.
The moment didn't start when he slept with her or when she tried her first dose of methamphetamine or whatever. The moment started when that car pulled up and she gave herself no way out. No other. She's cold. This man's offering me some food and a warm car to jump into. What's the worst that's going to happen? Well, the worst is that you could get heavily addicted to something that would change the course of your life forever.
Unfortunately.
Very hard to get out of. Have you seen many people, because you mentioned Grace's program, you said a lot of people that you bump into that you might have had a hand in arresting or bringing into incarcerate have changed quite a bit, and you see them all dressed up. So there's a belief in that program as well that people can and do get better, right?
Yeah. I mean, like the drug court it's, I think it's about 10 years old. I'm not sure how long it's been there for.
She said she's been with him for 5 years and then 18 before that, so just around 20, I think.
Oh, maybe. I like I said, I mean, I can't remember.
Different.
But through my years that I've been there, I've seen people come in to the system many years about, when I first started, and then they go through this program, and then honestly, they're all cleaned up. They're a totally different person when they first came into jail, right? Yeah. So I get to hear their stories. Oh, today I'm working. I got a job. I got married. I just had a child. We just bought a house. These are things you get to hear, and so I think the program is very effective. It's working and it's helping people, and I wish that our government would recognize that and maybe put more money and give them more resources to work with this problem. So.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Instead what?
Of injection sites.
Yeah. It's back to the injection sites. Yeah. No, and you brought up a good point. Like I said, I never thought about it that way. But how do you feel? I want to ask you a question. How do you feel about the phrase Black Lives Matter? How do you feel about that phrase?
I think it's...
that question just came out of nowhere, I know, but it was an interesting one that I had read up on and certain answers, and I just thought I'd ask you. You seem to be very in tune with your thoughts and your vision.
I'm going to be honest and upfront.
Please.
Okay. And I think we have a problem with, especially in our society, with hate crime. It's growing. The stats are showing that, I mean, they're up. And so there's a lot of racism and bigotry in our society. So I believe personally in an all-inclusive Alberta and in a world, like I treat everybody equally.
Yeah.
I don't care where you come from, what color you are, what sexual orientation you are.
From the day I met you, you seemed that way.
I believe in true equality.
Yeah.
We all have our equal rights, but we also have responsibility in our society, right? So, unfortunately, through going back to my days of door knocking and talking to people, it touched me in many, these conversations, especially this issue, because people would say, what are you going to do about this race? Or, immigration is a big issue. How come we're letting these people in our country? I don't believe it's fully, it's all about racism. It's about economic reasons too. People are saying, well, I feel betrayed. My government is paying money to these people when I have to pay. How come the immigrants are getting free education, free housing, free everything, free, memberships to recreation centers while I'm paying for all this? So I don't think it's fully, how do you say it? They're full of hate. I think they feel, betrayed from their own government that in one sense, I'm paying for all this and other people get a free ride. So, I think,
it should be the same all across the board.
Well, it goes back to what me and you were talking about. It's time to take care of our own people. It's time to, start creating career jobs and making life more affordable for people and stop taking it out on one another. Immigration policy needs reforming. Yes, I do. And we got to start the conversation right now. I believe that. Brother, when we talk from the past and we're talking about the present, right? In the past, I can tell you, my father brought his brother to this country. He lived with us for about a year.
Most of ours, my dad brought my uncle.
Yeah. He lived with us for about a year. He taught him the language, taught him how to drive, got him a job. And
he had to get his license, though.
Yeah, he had to get his license, right?
But taught him how to drive. He's good.
Exactly.
He's had my blessings.
And everything like that, right? So, yeah, and then he bought his own house, got married, and started his own life. Yeah. He didn't use the system. In today's world, like, we're letting in people, refugees and immigrants, and it's costing our system a lot of money. And I think that's why people have a problem with that.
But isn't that how like everything started in the first place? Is everybody came to one country and flourished, and people started coming in left and right, like from the beginning, and that's how everything grew and got built.
I think Chris is saying if immigrants had a big hand in building Canada into what it is, why stop them from coming now? Yeah, like what's changed as immigrants like your father and my father and immigrants that are trying to get in now? Is it because the system's flawed a little bit, or are intentions different?
No. Okay, what I was trying to say was that the before policy where you're allowed to bring brother or sister or a family member from your country to come here, and you would sponsor that person
on your own,
opposed to now the taxpayers are picking up the burden for the cost.
And that's why they're upset.
That's why they're upset, and that's my
doesn't motivate them that much.
That's
though.
my personal opinion, right? I mean,
sense,
I'm only telling you what I heard and believe, right? So this is what I've been hearing from when I was knocking on doors. People were upset about that issue, right? We're not nobody's against immigrants. We're all immigrants, one way or another, right?
Yeah.
So you came yesterday, I came today.
Yeah.
Well, we're here now together. Let's live in peace and harmony, right? But what we're saying, there's times where we now have to close our doors because the resources aren't there to give out.
Because it's no longer a family member or friend paying the price and doing their civic duty and responsibility to help you out when you get here. Now it's like, well, it's being paid for anyways. Come on in, relax, sit up on 107 Ave or wherever you want to reside, and then take it easy from there.
Right.
The approach seems to be different. Okay, that makes sense. I wasn't.
For me personally, if my tax money goes towards helping somebody else have a better life from where they were previously, I'm all for that. Like if they're in like like a war-torn country, or it was if they were just worse off from wherever they were, and then they come to Canada and they live a better life.
And some of them
Because-
deserve that, like for sure. And I don't know if you can speak on all of them, but
Like
most,
screen,
you know.
like, I don't know the details, but yeah, if you can screen out like the bad from the good,
That's where the
and-
process comes in, yeah.
and be aware and like acknowledge that kind of thing, and then see who's the good person, and then if you want to give them some, like, start them out, you know, just to get their way inside, and then
Get
build
the
up
ball
from there,
rolling.
you know what I mean? And then they can grow, and then they'll help society. They'll benefit from society, and society will benefit from them being here too.
How do you feel about that?
I agree with what you're saying. We all want to help the world, but you got to help yourself at times before you can help the world, right?
Yeah.
And help others, right? I mean, just bring it
Because you
down.
leave yourself with
I'll
yeah.
ask you some question. If you're at home and you have siblings and children, you know, and you only have $10 left, do you go give your $10 to your neighbor who's starving and you don't give your own family?
Well, is my
Or do you
sibling starving?
Yeah. I mean, this is what you have to live with. Do you understand what I'm
Like
trying
they
to say?
need it as much as your neighbor.
Yeah. So I mean,
But
you,
Where else is that money going to go to?
well, what I'm saying, I'm just giving you like a little bit of an example. Like, do you spend that money that you only have on your family, which also needs things,
If
right?
my family is in the same position
If
as
you have-
my neighbor,
Right.
then I would give it to my family.
There you go. And that's all. You know, I think that's where-
First, like don't not help your neighbor,
Yeah.
but he's just saying, Ali, I think is making the point that we need to look after ourselves, because then how are we supposed to look after others if we're not
I'll
looking?
give them a small portion.
You know what I'm saying?
If
But just
I'll
saying
give
we
them
got to
like
look
$1
after
and
yourself, right?
No, I agree with you. I mean, there's ways of helping in the world, right? I mean,
It's not
the
always
only
just
way
money.
is not bringing everybody over here and saying, come and live here, right? There's ways of helping people across the world. We can send blankets and
You can stop
food
bombing.
and stop
That's-
bombing. There you go. You know, I mean, these are things that we can do.
Because sometimes they're not running from their problems; they're running from problems that are being created
Exactly.
over there, and then back to here. So it's a vicious cycle, or it can be. You know?
Yes, I mean those are issues other ways of helping people, and that's all I'm trying to say. I'm giving you the perspective of what I heard on the doorsteps, talking to people, and I don't think it's a more what I'm trying to say to you. It's not all hate. I think there's that sense of, well, wait a minute, what about me? I'm working my ass off, my butt off here, to trying to survive, and other people are getting a free ride. You know, when you hear them speak, what would you say to that person?
I'm not sure. I don't.
And going into respect to what you were saying, you want to help, because I think everybody wants to help, right? We all want to help one another, right?
At our core,
Yeah.
that's what we want,
But
right?
you know, we also have to help ourselves at times, and I think, and I do recognize that. Yeah, you know, I mean, we have to sit down and discuss, you know, our policies and how we can make things better on immigration. So, and the conversation has to start. Like, I mean, I think the federal government is out of touch. They don't know what Canadians are going through, right?
Yeah.
So,
Like in the past, like I struggled with money too, right?
yeah.
And say if I'm still at the moment still struggling, and I see somebody worse off than I am, I would still go spend $100 on them, $30 on them. If they're living on the street, they have nothing.
But then you
If
have
they-
problems like you had the other day, where you gave somebody a break because they needed it,
Yeah.
and ended up biting you in the ass.
Yeah.
So that's where that other way of
Sure.
thinking. Well, it's what his way of thinking would have.
People take advantage. Sometimes.
People do take advantage. So some need our $10, like you were saying, more than our kids do. Like some will grip you in such a way that you probably take the $10 from your kid and give it to them for sure. But not all are like that. And sometimes looking after yourself first allows you to look after others. Where if you leave yourself resentful with no money,
100%.
being disrespected or taken advantage of, how willing are you to help the next guy, even if he really does need it and you have the resources? All of a sudden you become resentful. So looking after yourself keeps you not only financially, but your mindset in that frame of being able to help others. You know what I mean? Like you have to almost look after yourself, not only financially, but mentally, so you can keep helping if you're the kind of person you are and we are. You know what I'm saying? So I wanted to ask you a quick question about, we were talking about race and diversity. 25 years ago, we saw very few, if any, women in our police force. We saw very few Pakistanis, very few Lebanese people, very few blacks. that were, you know what I mean? So how has that changed in, 25 years ago to now, where you see this, diversity everywhere in our city? Has that been something that's helped out quite a bit? Has it been like in your personal experience, because you probably watched that sort of come to life? How do you feel that's affected, if any, our city?
Oh, in a positive way.
And okay.
Oh, 100%, brother. Every female officers, because we're getting more female prisoners, and we're dealing with female matters and stuff like that. You need them. Female officers are very well. I would say they're even better than male officers when it comes to verbal contact, writing skills, stuff like that. Yeah. They play a big role. When it comes to cultural minorities, second languages, they come in handy. Or even understanding the culture and the traditions.
Softness when you need it.
When you knock on, Muslim community is a big community in our city right now. And if a policeman knocks on a door, and nobody's responding or answering, they may think something's going, they could hear something in the background, but they may think something's going in behind the doors, right? Yeah. But all she's doing is running to get her veil to put on her head, right? Because in her house, she doesn't have to wear it, right? Yeah. And she's going to go open the door. Yeah. Just simple things like that. Like they understand that,
So the guy with his ear to the door, what are they running and hiding?
Exactly, right?
What are they putting away? Which, by the way, we did before you walked in the studio. We put all our weapons, our drugs
everything away.
Yeah, everything. That's why
the pipes.
The cocaine's no longer on the mirror.
No, I'm just you missed a spot there.
That's just dust.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, I know what you mean. Like sometimes with understanding diversity comes
language barriers, right?
Yeah, you diffuse a lot of unhealthy situations that might arise that you could have easily just had that understanding by having that diversity sort of settle in on you, where you understand the guy across from you a little bit better. Yeah, as I do now. So, yeah. We didn't know about this before, but is there a way anybody can get a hold of you, Ali, if they wanted to, support your cause and your ideas and stuff like that? Is there a website they go to? Is there a number they call? How can people reach out if they wanted to continue this conversation with you? Besides me doing podcast number 2.
Yeah, no, anytime. I mean, I'm not afraid to give my number out. I mean, 780-267-6766. Feel free to call anytime. If I can help, I would help. Yeah. I can elaborate a little bit more on what my thoughts are and stuff like that, if anybody wanted to ask me any questions or anything like that. Yeah. So, if people needed some advice on how to join the Alberta Sheriffs, which I would highly, highly advise.
How do people go about doing that?
To join the Alberta Sheriffs?
Yeah, like what's the first step?
The first step I would recommend and suggest is, before you get into this, because it's a long journey, you got to know what the job entails of, and if you really, really want to do it. So I mean, there's some risk factors to it. There's some physical and mental responsibilities. So it is very a demanding job. So look into the situation and then ask yourself, do I really want to do this, right?
So you're talking about like a ride along?
There's plenty
of like civilian things that you could do. Like you can go and do some physical training with the police officers too. Yeah. And you can do like multiple ride alongs just to get a feel for it too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's we have that pair where you have to qualify for, like he said, physical. You can go and watch that. See, can I do this? What would it take for me to?
Sometimes by looking, you could tell you can't do it.
You can't do it. Yeah.
No, like I've seen guys that were like that didn't look like they were in shape, and they were doing.
I can do it. I'm just saying, some people just looking.
The hardest thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
For fitness training is police training. It was the fitness part of it was the hardest thing that I've ever done.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's not all, and trust me, I think also,
especially with that belt around you and that vest, everything gets a little bit harder, right?
But more harder than that is also the entrance exam and the language skills that you're supposed to have, the writing skills. These, right?
I didn't go that far.
You didn't go that far? Well, I mean, as you go down the line, you got to be tested on all that stuff, right? So these are things that because before you to put in your application, I think they still recommend that you have the pair done, a class 4, your first aid certificate. So there's a lot of things you have to do before, just for them to look at your application.
Yeah.
So it's costly and it's also time consuming.
But sometimes the mind behind all these crimes isn't to be taken lightly.
No.
Like there's some of the smartest mind. They're almost challenging themselves to see if they can get away with certain things. That just blew my mind. Jeffrey Dahmer 148. Albert Einstein's 162 or something like that for IQ. So the genius in some of these criminals isn't to be taken lightly either.
No.
So I commend you for because I know you're not putting up with idiots. You're not just having to deal with people that are below you.
Yeah.
You're dealing with some guys that can insult your intelligence and do so rightfully. So it's not an easy job at all.
No.
It's very gratifying as you mentioned earlier. So I respect what you do, and I respect your position on most things that you talked about. I wish you luck in the next race. I know we'll be there to support, and maybe we'll do another one of these to really get the word out there. Man, there's so many questions to ask you that we didn't know. There's just so much, and I have a bunch written down, but I wanted to cover most of the things that you feel passionately about, and me and Chris had to ask you about. But is there anything else you want to mention that we may have forgotten? Everybody takes these off and they're like, you know what would have been good, Omar? And they'll be doing this from the car.
Yeah.
So I'll give you a moment to think about something else that you might want to bring up before we end this thing.
You know what? This was on a short notice. I mean, we talked about it yesterday, and I know that when I do get in my car, I'm going to be, oh, geez, I wish I would have said this and this, and I would have brought this up, and things are going to come to your head. And
it's inevitable, I guess. It's gonna
everybody.
happen.
It goes through everybody. But I did leave my number, and if anybody wants to ask me on a question or want me to elaborate on things, I don't mind them phoning and stuff like that. I've got nothing to hide, brother. Trust me.
No, you don't seem that way.
No,
Your heart's
I try
on
to.
your sleeve.
Yeah, and I speak from the hip, and I speak whatever is on the tip of my tongue. Once again, I'd also like to add, if I did offend anybody, because we live in this
They've left the room already.
politically correct, correct world that you have to.
You're always going to offend somebody.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No matter what you say.
You can be president of the United States and offend people.
Some, yeah,
you're fine.
Yeah, even a stance may offend somebody. So, but I do apologize sincerely. And I hope I do respect their positions, and I hope they can respect mine, and we'll just leave it at that, I guess.
Well, if I get pulled over, I hope it's by you, so I can be like, "Hey, remember you were my guest? Let me go."
Unfortunately, I work at the courthouse, and I'm not on the road, and
Also, I wanted to add that,
and I like to stay there. Trust me.
yeah,
Every year, I always put myself, because I'm getting to that age. I got 5 more years to retire.
Yeah, you're looking good, brother. By the way,
5 more
You're
years,
looking good.
and I'm just gonna coast. Yeah.
But we look forward to having you again in the future. So I don't know what you got coming up, but I wish you the best of luck, and keep in touch. You got my number, I got yours.
Yeah.
We'll, if we have to get together sooner rather than later, you're always welcome here, because this was super interesting and informative.
Thank
I
you.
didn't know half the stuff you were saying, but now I do.
Oh, trust me, it's a good experience for me too.
Yeah.
And I think I also learned a lot here in this podcast.
Awesome. We love teaching.
Yeah.
Any
Yeah,
chance
no,
we get.
for sure.
we're glad that you're our first, or we're your first podcast. That's awesome. I
Thank
love
you.
hearing
And
that.
I hope
Yeah.
I did a good job. And once again, I do apologize if I said something that I shouldn't have. And
The mic picked up everything. You did great.
thanks, brother.
All
Okay.
right.